Well, it was found down at Fort Wayne, Indiana. It was in a scrapyard. And I heard about it, and I looked in the book right away that I have several books on the history of Model T Fords and how you could change their structure and get them into grassroots racing models. And there was definitely one shaped like this in the book, and it was called a Champion Model E Racer. And it was built in Chicago. It cost $165 FOB, freight on board, for the radiator shell and for the body. So I said, wait a minute, I've never seen one of these before. I have to have it for the collection. So we went down to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and bought it back, and then we started restoring it with the help of Peter Fawcett's and Art Carty's place out in Whitby. Slowly but steadily we brought it back, and we haven't been able to find another one since it's been completed. It's a really lovely car. It runs real well. It's got a 2-speed Ruxtl rear end, and it's still retained the flathead. Instead of putting an overhead valve setup like a Franti Ford or a Raggio setup, I put on a Waukesha Ricardo flathead. And it's got Bosch ignition, it's got a Rayfield racing carburetor, it's got a Suicide front end on it, it's got aluminum pistons, and a big crankshaft in it that we put in that makes it. I broke a crankshaft, in fact, in this thing just last year, so we're back on the road with it again. Aside from that, we've got Buffalo wire wheels on this car, and it's a little lower because of the suspension, front and back. As you can see, it's we channeled down over top, so it's kind of a nice height. They were available so cheap, and then you had to work like the very devil to get the speed equipment, because that was the start of the speed equipment era too, where you could actually buy a camshaft, where you could go and get a special magneto, where you could get special rear end ratios. This is a 3-to-1, whereas you know, that's not normal in a Model T Ford. So you got these things humming at 60, 75 miles an hour. In fact, in 1923, a Model T Ford with a Franti engine came 5th at Indianapolis. And you can imagine the lowly Model T driver sitting in the grandstands being jeered at all his life or all the time he's owned his Model T, and suddenly it comes 5th over the Benz and Duesenbergs and all of the other cars that were racing around the track, and he sort of just said, I see, he just came 5th. Model T Ford was my first car. I purchased my first Model T from an old man called Louis Redhead. He was a maker of a battery called a Redhead Red Hot battery. And I said, I sure love that car. And he said, well, would you like to buy it? And I said, I sure would, can I? And he said, yes, you can. He said, I'm too old to drive now. He said, I'll teach you how to drive it with the 3 pedals on the floor. I said, all right. That was it. I never looked back. I loved my Model Ts ever since.